Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Welcome back to the Noah and Robbie podcast. Today we are going to be talking about tennis. Wachow.
Today we have two coaches that we got to answer some questions for us, and we will be responding to their answers.
The first person coach we got, our first person today is Bob Excel, and he is a tennis coach for the U25 UBC division. I've had the pleasure of working with him several times. Great guy and great coach. The second person we will be reviewing his answers on is Covey Tour. Now, he's not a coach, but he does facilitate and assess all of the sports and manages a lot of the teams and programs that go on. So we thought he'd be a great addition and a little different, but really good to get his input on how he feels about the progression of the sports.
I think that's a really great idea to have his input into our podcast. It'll give us a whole new perspective. All right, so do you want to tell me a little bit about Bob Excel and his program and the average cost, Robbie?
Well, I would love to. Bob Excel coaches the U25 UBC division, but he also coaches the beginners. His main focus today was talking about just individual lessons with players, and that can run you about $300 for about 6 hours. And obviously there's no cost if you get a scholarship to play for the UBC U25 team, the high level division. But he says on a daily basis, not on a daily basis, but more on on the scholarship level, everything, the combinations, everything you have, it usually adds up to about 40 to 50 grand a year is what you'll be getting. And that's not including the opportunities you receive from being in these programs. The next question we asked him was, how do you feel sports benefit your players? And he said, physical development, it helps your fitness, your coordination, and just your mental mindset going into it. He also mentioned social skills, learning to compete and work together as a team rather than just self, and also teamwork, example playing doubles or being part of a school team.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of the time when you think of tennis, you think of it as a solo sport. So to hear that there's also a team aspect is really quite interesting and gives a whole new side to this sport.
Yeah, normally when you think of tennis, you think it's like a solo sport, and that's true in a sense for the game sense, but when you're practicing with a team, you're working with each other, you're working to benefit each other, and it's really more of a team aspect rather than just a solo.
So the next question for Bob was, what does your program offer for future opportunities or advancements of its athletes?
Now, here he's talking about, rather than the U25 UBC High Development Team, he's talking about the beginners to intermediates, to people that they're trying to develop to become that level of competition. Often he says, our programs lead to opportunities like making a high school team, playing and competing in local tournaments, or joining a league team. But most of all, his main goal is for them to receive a tennis scholarship, coaching at UBC or other clubs or tennis centers, and even turning professional is a dream.
Yeah, I think that's also really important to have a coach that has experienced some levels that are just really beginner players and then coaching all the way up to highly advanced tennis players, because it really gives a great perspective of the different heights a player can achieve and where your starting point.
It's also cool to see that Bob is thinking of your future. If you don't want to partake in the professional level, you can become a coach and you can help other kids develop their skills. And he's just trying to teach you life skills that can help you, even if it's not to do with tennis.
That's a really good point there. And as we move forward with the next question about what makes your program stand out from others in the same sport. So this will be really interesting to hear what he has to say about his program.
Now, although Bob does state that obviously the UBC Tennis Center is great, all of the coaches are certified by Tennis Canada, and many of our full-time coaches have many years of coaching and playing experience, he also states that those are pretty basic, and most of the other schools have that as well. What he thinks really drives UBC to be such a successful tennis team and tennis players is the dedication and care that all the coaches give, and just the student reputation that they all have for their student athletes, and helping them pursue their future career, any dynamics that they're faced with, they can help achieve that goal. Bob also states that some players need to go back home, which could be in the States or somewhere else, and they do offer that, and they also offer accommodations for them where they can still have a tennis court nearby and hopefully have a coach or someone they can help get lessons from just to keep them ready and available in the off season, just to really further their team.
Yeah, that's actually really cool because it really shows how much the coaches and the program cares about its players. And it's just a next step up from this program to show their dedication to commitment and the development of their players. Our final question for Bob Excel was, what makes your program successful?
Now, here he says he has a world-class facility and equipment, experienced and certified coaches that take pride in caring the students they teach, which he also mentioned in the previous question. Programs year-round for practically every level of tennis players. Again, this is diving deeper into the aspect of him having, if they go back home, he has a teacher for him that can help during the off-season. Players can play and practice on their own by reserving a court, which is true. Even I've done it before. If you want to reserve a court, you just call the front desk or you call your coach, and that tennis court is reserved for you at that level.
I think that's really cool. I might have to try this one time and get a court, and I could maybe work on my tennis skills. Even though I'm an amateur and I don't play much and I've barely played, it would be a great opportunity for me to be introduced into the sport and have just a good time playing tennis.
Now, I think it's really interesting all the Bob aspect was, and I think he makes some good points, and I can agree with almost everything he said. Furthermore, our next person is Covey Tour. Now, he's the one that we were both very interested in, and although he's not a coach, he's a facility manager, which we explained at the start. And so some of our questions didn't apply to him fully, but we got him to answer some different ones. The first one was, what sport do you coach? And as he said, he's a facilities manager, and he kind of coaches all the sports teams. Although he's not there every time and every practice, he takes care of all the guys, and he's really there to make sure all the programs are running smoothly.
All right, and I think it's an interesting aspect and an interesting point of view to have from Covey Tour about managing all these different sports and controlling them. So we asked him, how do you feel sports benefit your players?
The next question we asked Covey Tour was, what is the average cost of your program? Now, he said the average cost is very dependent on the athlete and the previous scholarship and scholarship offers he's been provided. And he says a good gauge is about 12 to 50 grand for res and all schooling costs per year mixed in with sports.
The next question for Mr. Tour is, how do you feel sports benefit your players?
Now, he says that sports build character and help grow a positive mindset. Although it's not for everyone, what is taught mentally is bigger than the game itself. Which is true. As we talked about in our hockey and in our baseball, sports do help you mentally in your future, and it creates character, which is a big one that we all look for in sports. It helps you deal with your highs and it helps you deal with your lows, and it just grows you mentally as a person and can really help you develop skills that some people may not develop until further in their life.
Yeah, I think that's just a really underrated aspect of sports that have been brought out in our coaches' responses, just about how they're so well off, like, for its athletes. When these athletes learn these skills in an environment where it's safe to fail and safe to learn how to act and respond to different challenges and adversity. So in all, I think it's a great way to uncover new talents and just realize how to act in your future life and in the world as a human being.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Noah, that you bring up there. Our next question, what does your program offer for future opportunities or advancements of its athletes? Advancements, that's the word I was looking for. Covey Tour said, we are a university after this. Hopefully, you might play in the NHL, but rarely that ever happens. There, he's talking about hockey. And he's also gauging the perspective on how many athletes actually make the NHL and how hard it is to really make that top level of hockey. In a tennis sense, he's talking about making the TSNSL, which is the top level in a university level way. So he's really thinking that the players are doing this more for the schooling and the university opportunities that they get, while also maintaining a great sports, I guess you could say, balance in a sense.
I think that's a really great point, having a realistic view on your expectations and your ability to play tennis or any sport you choose to play, because it's a great way to give you opportunities and help advance your schooling and career while playing a sport that you love, and also having a realistic idea that you probably will not go pro in this sport, but you can use it for your benefit and help you advance in your future professions and future ambitions.
The next question we asked Cubby Tour was, what makes your program stand out from others in the same sport? And he said, having a big campus with lots of intellectual people to help you persevere in your sport. Now, we kind of talked about this as well, but having a good environment and a good reputable students, in a sense, it can really make you a better athlete, and it can really make you, as he said, persevere. Now, just putting this in a reference context of me, when we're at school, we kind of create a reputation of we're hockey players. We have to maintain the hockey player reputation, and a lot of people look up to that and say they play hockey, so that's what we kind of have to do. But when you have people in UBC that are like, he's a student athlete, he plays tennis, it can be a little different for them and can really help them persevere in their sport.
Yeah, I think really perseverance is a huge skill learned in sports, and it's also a great way to deal with adversity. So, as we move on to our final question about what makes your program successful, we're going to hear from Covey Tour and his responses.
Covey Tour said, answering the question, the trainers, coaches, students, and everyone involved in creating and shaping the athletes. He also said, most of the athletes make us successful, as in us being the UBC team. Now, he kind of answered that like a businessman, and in hindsight, he is kind of the business of all the operations that are going down. He has to make sure he's feeding money into it, but he's also getting some money back and just seeing how the red and black lines work. I think this is a great point that he made. We all talked about this, and we talked about this several times, and really, sports are a great way of creating and shaping your future. And having people that care and are really dedicated to your future and just making you a better person in general make all the difference in sports.
Yeah, having just dedicated players and athletes and coaches is just a great aspect to a team and to a program, and that's a great way to build your sport within those communities.
Now, after looking at all of Cubby's answers and analyzing them, I think it was a really cool perspective of him not being a coach itself, but really analyzing and all diving into all the operations and just having a little, almost jack of all trades, you could say. It was a different perspective, and I was really pleased that he could take the time out of his day to answer these questions.
As we finally conclude our 4 podcasts, it was great hearing from all our coaches, and I really appreciate all the commitments and the answers that were provided from athletes and coaches. And thank you for listening to all our podcasts. We will see you maybe next time.
Noah Robbie Podcast.